This is going to be my first installment of how I think about making FlagMate happen, how I have thought about FlagMate happening. It's snowy. Well, it's actually, the roads are now clear in North Carolina, and I'm thankful that they're clear. I happen to be traveling to get a couple of images from Farmville, which I hadn't been able to get before. But I just wanted to have a moment where I start talking about things that I have done to push FlagMate along. And it might be useful down the road to people who are doing, or or embarking on a similar journey, so to speak. First of all, when I started FlagMate, and I don't know if I've ever explained the journey that I started and how it came about, but as a new golfer, and I've only been golfing for about 18 months, maybe 2 years total, but FlagMate wasn't a thing. It really started with Drone Hand Solutions. Drone Hand Solutions was my effort to utilize something that I thought I might be interested in, specifically drones. And as I was on the course, and as I was sort of courting those entities that might be willing to allow me to do stuff for them. Real estate, dilapidated properties, and golf courses. Well, I put my fish hooks in the water for real estate. Thought I had a good lead, and I think I still have a good lead. They looked at my work and they said that looks good. Then I also went with dilapidated properties. I reached out to the town of Pine Tops, and they said, we might be able to use your talents, so to speak, but right now it's not what we need or want. And then what remained was golf courses. And it was very simple for me and my wife to decide that we would get a membership at Macropines. It was very cheap, and I started golfing. It turns out that when I walked the course, my wife bought me a little push cart. It was free, so we paid $100 a month in order for me basically to golf freely nearly every day. And as I began doing that, I thought in my mind, I asked the question, why can't the flag tell me where it is? That is really how FlagMate started. Once I went down that road, I started to think about who I could talk to kind of figure out whether this was palatable or not. And I met Mark Hartley, the owner of Macropines and co-owner of Farmville. So once I began doing that, that's really how FlagMate came about. After that, once I started thinking about how I would go about doing it, what technology I would use, I think I started developing in my head where FlagMate would really kind of have teeth in the market, so to speak. So, long story short, I got to a certain point where I started working on FlagMate, and I'm quite happy that I discovered the question and then the answers that I came up with. And as this series will be, this portion of the things that will come to fruition with regards to what I think about how FlagMate was developed, it was that one question: why can't the flag tell me where it is? So I researched the technology, I researched the logistics of it all, and I began talking to Mark Harcum, and he said, in so many words, and he told me this later on, I'm not a tell you yes kind of guy from the very beginning, or tell you no kind of guy. He had also to wrap it around his mind. And I am thankful for the fact that Mark Hartley is the kind of person that he is, because he allowed me to be able to figure out the things that I wanted to figure out. And then as we started attacking that question together, it started to make sense to him. And he turns out to be the first entity that will make FlagMate appear on a course. So I bring that up because I think that the questions that we ask, sometimes the answer that you receive are very telling. And if you decide in your mind that you're going to answer those questions, whether the answer is positive or negative, it might turn out to be something worth pursuing. In this case, with FlagMate, it turns out that the question alone was good enough to pursue. So that's where I am now. That's where I find myself now, pursuing the answer to that question. Why can't the flag tell me or anybody else where it is? And we have multiple ways of trying to ascertain that. We have apps that, such as Arcos or 18 Birdies, that at the end of the day approximate the location of the flag. You have a rangefinder, which, if you are privy to the exact location of that flag, will tell you it's so many yards from where you are situated. But even then, the yardage that you receive doesn't necessarily tell you where on the greens it is. So I began to go down the road of trying to figure out how we can ascertain the exact location of the flag, and then also what that information would bear. In this case, in my case, in FlagMate's case, it turns out that there's a lot of information that you can receive when you have the exact location of the flag. There's a lot of things that you can do with that information that pertain to preventive maintenance, logistics, all of those things. And as I speak with Mark Hartley and anybody else who's involved with trying to help me figure out what FlagMate can do, I'm more and more convinced that the end point and the answer to that question yields a lot of information that is very useful in a way that allows me to make, or try to make, FlagMate a reality. So that's where I'm at with this, and that's a small glimpse of how I started with FlagMate.